My sister bought a $623,000 house in my name, so I exposed her at family dinner. The bank claimed I owed $623,000 on a mortgage I'd never even heard of, let alone signed for. Turned out, my own sister had used my name to snag her dream home. Over dinner one evening, I quietly slid the police report across the table and watched the color drain from her face, while our parents sat frozen in silence. She thought she'd pulled off the heist of a lifetime, but she had no idea I was about to rip away everything she held dear. But before I dive into all that, let me say this, I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit lately. If you're here and you like these stories, hitting that subscribe button is the easiest way to show support. It's fast, it's free, and it really helps keep this community growing strong. Hey there, my name's Jenna Carver. I'm 29, single, and working as a financial analyst out in Boston. I've always been the one holding things together. Started budgeting at 13, built my credit score from scratch, and worked my way up without ever asking for a handout. Now, my sister Brooke, she's 2 years older, and let's just say she always had an appetite for the flashy stuff. We're talking high-end purses, the flashiest cars she could lease, and designer heels she couldn't even pronounce. And when trouble came knocking, she always had some slick way of slipping out from under it. Our parents, especially Mom, let her get away with just about everything. She'd rack up insane credit card debt, and Mom would quietly cover it. She'd lose a job, and Dad would call in favors to land her another. Brooke was used to getting her way, no matter the cost, usually to the people around her, including me. Then came last November. I'd finally applied for pre-approval to buy a modest little condo. I was thrilled, I'd been saving for close to 10 years. But then an email from the bank stopped me cold. We're sorry, it said. Due to your current mortgage balance of $623,000, we're unable to move forward with your application. I just stared at it. What? I was sure it had to be a mistake. Maybe they'd mix me up with someone else. But when I called to ask for clarification, they gave me an address. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms. In Newton, a fancy neighborhood I couldn't even dream of living in. The documents had my full name, my social security number, and somehow even my signature. Only problem? I'd never laid eyes on those papers in my life. I don't know how long I sat there, just staring at my screen, before I finally picked up the phone and called the fraud department. That kicked off 3 of the worst weeks of my life. My bank accounts were frozen. My credit score tanked. I could barely breathe. I filed a police report, got in touch with attorneys, and even hired a private investigator. And somewhere deep in my gut, I already knew who'd done it. That sick, gnawing feeling wouldn't let go. Brooke. And sure enough, the private investigator confirmed it. Her signature on the mortgage paperwork matched ones from past leases she'd signed. The notary office had surveillance footage too. There she was, plain as day, using a fake ID with my name on it. She even went so far as to list my job and forge pay stubs to match. It wasn't just what she did that shocked me, it was the level of detail. Brooke wasn't clueless. She was deliberate, calculated, and she clearly thought I'd never catch on. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to be absolutely sure. Rock-solid evidence. No wiggle room. More than that, I wanted to see her face when the truth caught up with her. I wanted to hear the excuses, watch her scramble, hear that first gasp when she realized the jig was up. So I invited the whole family over for dinner. I cooked. I smiled. I set the table like nothing was out of the ordinary. Mom and Dad arrived first, laughing, happy, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. Then Brooke strutted in, dressed head to toe in designer labels, her stilettos clicking loud across my hardwood floors, cloaked in that same fake perfection she always wore. She hugged me like nothing was wrong. We all sat down and chatted about work, the weather, normal stuff. Then I brought out the folder. I slid it across the table like it weighed nothing. But to me, it was heavy with everything, years of betrayal, disappointment, and finally, the truth. She glanced at it, confused at first. But as she flipped through the pages, I saw it happen. Her eyes narrowed. Her mouth fell open. And all the color drained right out of her face. Mom asked what it was. Still staring at Brooke, I answered plainly. Brooke stole my identity to buy a house. That's the police report. I'm pressing charges. And then came the silence. Pure, electric, crackling silence. The silence was thick, suffocating. Then Mom finally spoke. No gasp. No outrage. Just this soft, shaky response that sounded like she'd rehearsed it a dozen times. There must be some mistake. Brooke would never. I cut her off before she could keep spinning that fairy tale. There's footage, I said. Forged pay stubs. And let's not forget the 6-figure debt now tanking my credit. Brooke stayed quiet. Didn't utter a word. Her lips twitched like she wanted to speak, but her eyes kept flicking around, already calculating her next angle. But I wasn't about to let her regroup. I leaned in, the words bubbling up from a place I'd kept sealed tight for too long. You used me, I told her, my voice steady. You saw me as your safety net, your backup plan. Well, guess what? I'm not your crutch anymore. You wanted a dream home? Great. Because that dream just became a legal nightmare. That's when she finally spoke. Her voice was fragile, barely holding together. I didn't think it would go this far, she whispered. I laughed. Not out of humor, but out of disbelief. It was sharp. Cold. Even I flinched at the sound of it. Of course you didn't, I shot back. Because things never go far for you. You lie, manipulate, wriggle your way out of every mess, and someone else always has to sweep it up. Well, not this time. I'm done being the one who cleans up after you. Dad tried to intervene, suggested we talk in private. I shut that down fast. No more side conversations, I said. If it needs to be said, It gets said in front of everyone now. Brooke started begging. She said it was a mistake. That she was desperate. That she was going to fix it. How? I asked, looking her dead in the eye. By taking out another loan in my name? She went dead quiet again. Mom sobbed. Dad took her side. And that was my cue. I stood up. We're done here, I said, calm as ever. But before walking away, I turned to Brooke one last time. You thought you were clever, I told her. You really believed you could fake my signature and walk away clean. But you forgot something. I catch fraud for a living. I track patterns. You tried to wreck my life. Now? I'm going to wreck yours. Then I left. I didn't take the folder with me. I left it right there on the table. Part of me wanted to crumble inside. After all, she was still my sister. My own blood. But there was another part of me, the one that had stayed quiet all these years, while she skated by without consequences. That part stood tall. I'd been silent for too long. She may have stolen my name, but she had no clue who she was really messing with. And I wasn't finished yet. From that night on, everything shifted. It wasn't just about what Brooke did anymore. It was the wake-up call that hit me like a brick. My whole family had been living inside some carefully polished illusion. An illusion where Brooke was always the center of attention, the one everyone protected. The so-called victim. And it didn't matter how many people she trampled to stay that way. The very next day, my phone rang. It was my lawyer. Charges were officially filed. Identity theft, mortgage fraud, wire fraud. Serious stuff. Enough to land her behind bars. And honestly, I didn't know what to feel. My heart didn't know whether to break or brace for impact. Some small, flickering part of me still hoped she'd step up, own it, and try to make things right. But by the end of that week, Brooke was already panicking. She sent me this long, spiraling text message, not quite an apology, more like a desperate attempt to rewrite the story. She admitted what she did, sure. But she painted herself as the poor little sister, pushed into a corner. Blamed the credit card companies. Blamed influencers on Instagram. Blamed the world. She said she just wanted a beautiful home to raise her future kids. That she assumed I'd be fine because I always land on my feet. And that's what made my blood boil all over again. She didn't ask. She didn't warn me. She stole from me because in her mind, I was just the backup generator. The emergency fund. The dependable plan B. I didn't reply. Instead, I forwarded that message straight to my lawyer. A week later, Brooke was officially served. At that same house, she fraudulently bought under my name. The private investigator I hired said she tried to deny living there. But the car in the driveway, the utilities registered under her name, and all those selfies she posted from the marble kitchen? Yeah, those told the real story. Then came the flood of family guilt. My mom called me, crying so hard I could barely understand her. Dad sent these long-winded emails, begging me to reconsider. They said I was ripping the family apart. Brooke could go to prison. Did I really want that on my conscience? I asked them just one question. If the roles were reversed, if I'd done this to her, would you be pleading with her to forgive me? On the other end, there was nothing but silence. That told me everything I needed to know. A few days later, I got a certified letter from Brooke's attorney. She wanted to settle. Said she'd sign the house over and make monthly payments if I agreed to drop the charges. Her argument? She didn't want a criminal record. Said it would ruin her career, her future, her relationships. But what about mine? My credit was in shambles. My condo plans, something I'd worked toward for nearly a decade, were dead in the water. I'd been flagged in every financial system like I was the criminal. All because my sister decided she was entitled to something and reached into my life to steal it. Still, I gave her offer some thought. Not because I wanted to let her off the hook, but because I was curious how far she'd go to save herself. So I asked for a face-to-face meeting, with both our lawyers in the room. She agreed. The meeting took place in a law office downtown, neutral ground. When Brooke walked in, she looked off. No glamour, no gloss. Dark circles under her eyes. Nails chipped. Her clothes didn't scream wealthy anymore. They barely whispered, put together. She sat across from me like she didn't recognize me, or maybe like she didn't recognize herself. Her attorney did most of the talking at first. There were formal apologies, regretful phrases, legal terms and settlement conditions. Then it was my turn to speak. I reached into my bag and pulled out the police report. Same as I did at dinner. I slid it across the table. But this time, I added something else, a letter from the bank. It confirmed foreclosure proceedings were starting. Brooke couldn't keep up with payments, because the mortgage was still technically under my name. I looked her straight in the eye. You thought you were buying your dream home, I told her. But what you really bought was a nightmare. One you can't afford. One you'll lose. And one that's going to haunt your record for the rest of your life. Her voice cracked. Tiff, please. I was going to fix it. I didn't know it would hurt you this badly. No, I said. You just didn't care, until you got caught. She asked if there was anything she could do to stop me from going through with the charges. I gave her the honest truth. No, nothing. Then I stood up, thanked the lawyers, and walked out. And this time, I didn't look back. Over the next few weeks, the consequences started rolling in fast. The house went into foreclosure. Brooke packed up and moved in with a friend. Mom stopped speaking to me, maybe out of shame, maybe out of loyalty to the daughter she'd never held accountable. Dad tried to keep the peace, but even he went quiet after a while. My family, the one I thought would always be solid, had cracked right down the middle. And me? I started putting myself back together. It wasn't simple. It took months to get my credit back on track. I had to write letters to every financial institution that flagged me, explaining the entire mess to strangers who looked at me like I was some kind of fraudster. I got denied for loans. Treated like a risk. Like I was the problem. But little by little, I rebuilt. What surprised me most was where the support came from. Colleagues I barely knew told me I was strong for taking a stand. Friends showed up without judgment, just kindness. Even an old college roommate sent me flowers and confessed she wished she'd spoken up years ago, back when Brooke used my name to dodge a parking ticket. Because this wasn't brand new. This was just the first time I stood my ground. A few weeks ago, we had the court hearing. Brooke took a plea deal. No prison time, but a felony record, restitution payments, and 5 years of probation. Her life, the version she'd carefully built on smoke and mirrors, was gone. As for me, I closed on a new home last month. A cozy 2-bedroom place with a river view. It's not just a home, it's proof that I survived. That I fought back. And that no matter how badly someone tries to steal your future, you can take it back. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't huge. But it was mine. Every single dollar poured into it was earned, honestly, painfully, and on my own terms. As I stood out on the balcony of my new condo, pen in hand, signing the final set of papers, I looked out over the skyline and let out a slow breath. And for just a moment, I thought about Brooke. She believed she was taking something from me. My name, my future, my peace. But what she didn't realize is that she gave me something far more valuable in return. Freedom. Because the day I walked away from her betrayal, when I stopped covering for her, stopped fixing her messes, I finally let go of the role I never asked for. I was no longer the backup plan. No longer the fixer. No longer the quiet, passive little sister who let things slide to keep the peace. I became the woman who finally chose herself. And from that day on, I never looked back.